Hey everybody, how's it going and welcome to Daily's 2A News. You know, it's been almost a decade since the Supreme Court has heard a Second Amendment case, and it looks like that streak is going to continue now that they've decided not to hear the case of the New York Rifle and Pistol Association v. New York City. That has been punted back to the lower court, so let's go ahead and talk about why and what happened. Okay, so here's what's going on. The New York State Rifle and Pistol Association filed a lawsuit against the city of New York because the city of New York had some of the most unconstitutional and extreme firearm transportation laws that I've ever seen personally. The city of New York had determined that you could simply take your firearm from your home to their determined point A or point B, and you couldn't stop anywhere in between. You couldn't get a cup of coffee, you couldn't go to the bathroom. It had to go to one of their predetermined point A's or point B's, and you couldn't go anywhere after. You couldn't go to a second home, you couldn't go to a second business. Essentially, it had to go from that end point back to your home. And so you can see that that was extremely burdensome. It was unconstitutional, and so the lawsuit was filed. It wound its way through the court system and found itself at the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court had actually decided to hear it. Now, after the Supreme Court decided to hear the case, that's when New York City decided that they were going to modify the law. So they changed the law just a little bit so that people could transport their firearms to more places. It's still completely restrictive. It's still totally unconstitutional, but it sort of nullified some of the arguments that the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association was making to the Supreme Court. So with the Supreme Court looking at the changes in the law, the Supreme Court said it's not really the same lawsuit anymore, and some of the arguments are now moot, and so they just decided to kick it back to the lower courts to assess damages. That's basically what happened. So the Supreme Court has once again failed to clarify the Second Amendment. We all know here in the firearms community that the Second Amendment is the only right that shall not be infringed, but they just refuse to hear anything about it anymore. It seems like the last big case, which was Heller, is going to be where they leave it, which really just dealt with firearms in the home. You know, we have a right to keep and a right to bear arms, and when you're leaving the home, that's really where the bear comes into place. And if you're restricting people's right to travel, if you're restricting where people can take their firearms, and they go somewhere that's not on the approved travel list, then they essentially lose the right to bear arms in that location, and it should still be something that is heard by the Supreme Court. So regardless whether or not the law was changed, if the law still exists in any form or fashion that restricts where somebody could bear arms, then I think the Supreme Court should have still heard it. But it seems like they're just being cowards on this one and refuse to take up Second Amendment cases because maybe they don't want to see it affect the entire country. Right now, it's just something that they're dealing with in New York, and all these other cases are popping up that are kind of more localized, and whatever ruling that they make affects things nationally. I don't know exactly what's going on, but again, the Supreme Court fails to uphold the principles of the Second Amendment by not hearing another Second Amendment related case. So again, it's just, it's kind of a blow, and I know that this could be taken back to the Supreme Court, but for now, again, the Supreme Court has failed the Constitution, in my own personal opinion. I think that this case definitely should have been heard, regardless if it was changed or modified, but that's what's taken place as of today, April 27th, Monday. Anyway, I want to thank you guys all very much for watching. I'll try and stay on top of this as best I can, and hopefully the Supreme Court gets off its butt and decides that the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. So I want to thank you all very much again for watching. Please like, subscribe. Have a great day.